Before we begin, for the first time on this channel, we have a sin from the comments. This time there's only one. Let's go back to episode 2. In the cave scene, when Alexander dies, I didn't notice any mistakes because the camera is static and the angle never changes. But as we later see in the forest fire flashback, Akru and Sura are still puppies at that point. Here, however, they're already fully grown.
Hello everyone, this is Jungle Boy again. Yes, I finally decided to make a proper intro. This episode will be a small experiment. Previous episodes never went over 4 minutes, so this time I'll be covering 3 episodes at once: The Jungle Law, The New Friends, and Solitary Kichi. This format will slow down production a little, but at least I won't have to stretch this series into 52 separate episodes. Because of that, the sin counter will no longer reset after each episode. From now on, it's one continuous total. And right now, we're sitting at 131 sins. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. The backgrounds change. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. The flowers near Baloo are red in the close-up, but pink in the wide shot.
The bananas behind the characters are sometimes yellow, sometimes green, and in this shot, they've disappeared altogether.
The tree behind Baloo keeps switching between green and gray. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. The backgrounds changes too. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. The ground around the den suddenly turns yellow. Lighting before, lighting after. The entrance of the den changes shape.
Oh. Goodbye, Akru. Goodbye, Sura. Mother, tell me what happened. Why did you chase them away?
I chased them away because they're grown up now.
So what if they're grown up? Why do they have to go? We're a family, aren't we?
Because it's the law of the jungle.
The law of the jungle?
So you're telling me that after roughly 4 years in the jungle, this is the first time Mowgli hears about the jungle law? Lighting before, lighting after.
Out of the way! I wasn't gonna harm your baby. I'm in a hurry. Please let me go by. Ah! Ah!
Considering how many times wild boars and other animals will attack Mowgli later on, it's strange that no one explains the secret word to him until episode 13. The wolves' positions in the wide shot don't match the close-ups. Mowgli is standing between 2 wolves. 1 shot later, only 1 is left. Lighting before, lighting after. The backgrounds change. Mowgli was standing next to Sura and Akru. Now he's gone. Lighting before, lighting after. Throughout this entire scene, the ground keeps switching between normal daylight and sunset lighting, even though it's supposed to be sunset. The wolves beside Mowgli and Lala disappear. Lighting before, lighting after. Background change. Those rock formations behind the mountains weren't there a second ago. The grass was moving in the wind in the wide shot. Now it suddenly isn't. Background change. And another one. Rocks and wolves suddenly appear in the background. Another background change. That buffalo throws Mowgli way too high. Mowgli is injured, but the wound won't actually be drawn again until the fight with Tabaki. There are suddenly more branches inside the cave. There's way too much blood in these tracks considering Mowgli's wound was already licked clean and he was holding his side. The roots hanging from the branch suddenly move higher. The grass beneath Tabaki isn't trampled, then suddenly it is. Judging by the perspective, there should be roots behind Mowgli, not dense jungle. Mowgli's wound keeps disappearing and reappearing. The blood only shows up when the scene needs extra drama. The tree behind Mowgli changes. There was a cliff behind him. Now it's a slope.
Another background change. This time, it's even more noticeable.
The slope Tabaki climbed up on disappears. Classic cliché. rescued at the very last second. The vine around the tree behind Bagheera disappears. Baloo comes from the direction where Tabaki was thrown, but now there's a fallen tree there that Mowgli and Tabaki had just run around. Background change. And another one. And another one. Everyone completely forgets Mowgli's injured. Just look at him jumping around when Lala arrives. Background change. Finally, I want to discuss one point. In the first episode, I gave a sin because Tabaki is a hyena, even though I believed hyenas didn't live in the Indian jungle. Since then, I've repeatedly been told that striped hyenas, which Tabaki is based on, do live in India. The problem is I still can't find a clear answer, so if anyone knows for sure, please settle this once and for all in the comments.
The vines suddenly become the same color as tree bark. Lighting before, lighting after. One branch disappears. A fall from that height into a waterfall and then into a tree shouldn't leave Kichi completely unharmed. The grass is short, now it's tall, and now it's short again. The boulder suddenly becomes flat and changes shape. Lighting before, lighting after. The background behind the bush is different. And again. Background before the close-up, background after the close-up. There wasn't even a hint of those lilies before. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. Both the background and the lighting change.
What kind of animal is he?
That's a red panda. They're very rare.
Bagheera! And how do you know that?
They don't normally live in these parts.
How does Bagheera even know about red pandas, or never given an answer?
He floated into view on a piece of driftwood. And he's still alive, which means I can have him.
That's horrible!
He must have fallen into the river far upstream. Red pandas live way up in the distant Himalaya mountains.
It's also a little strange that the animals use some of the same geographical names humans do, like the Himalayas. The background changes. Another forest fire flashback appears, so that's another 3 sins from episode 2. Akru suddenly teleports backwards between shots. Lighting before, lighting after. The tree changes slightly. The nest had a different shape just a moment ago. By the way, real red pandas don't actually have masks that look like this. Lighting before, lighting after. Mowgli's bitten finger has exactly the same problem as his wound in the previous episode. It keeps disappearing and only bleeds when the scene needs extra drama. Behind Liri, there used to be jungle. Now it's a river. Lighting before, lighting after. And again. And again. Different wolves are now standing behind Akru and Sura. The background behind Tabaki changes during the zoom-in. Kichi was sitting in short grass. Now it's tall. The background changes again. Lighting before, lighting after. The grass is short again, and now it's turned yellow. The branch behind Mowgli disappears. The black part of Mowgli's wound keeps appearing and disappearing. Lighting before, lighting after. The vegetation around the tree changes slightly. The palm trees that were behind Mowgli should logically be in front of him after he turns around, but they're still behind him. In this shot, Kichi is sleeping next to Luri's leg, even though her leg wasn't there in the previous shot. The shadow disappears as well. The same problem with brightly lit heads during conversations returns, even when it contradicts the scene's lighting. Apparently, everyone forgot about the root I was complaining about back in episode 4. There's suddenly more shade under the tree. A flower appears next to Mowgli out of nowhere. Now the flower has moved to the side, even though it should be directly in front of Kichi. The riverbank changes shape slightly. When the camera angle changes, the entire location changes with it. The bush Lala comes out of wasn't there before and disappears again one shot later. More changes to the location. When Lala starts licking her lips, her tail is in front of her. One shot later, it's behind her. The bush reappears, but now it's a completely different bush. Sura, Akru, and Lala were standing level with the grass. Now they're noticeably taller than it. There wasn't even a hint of this black rhinoceros in the previous shots. The rhinoceros suddenly ends up much farther away between camera angles. The bushes in front of the characters keep changing from shot to shot. The background changes right before our eyes without even cutting to a different camera angle. The howling continues, but the wolf on top of the rock disappears. The crowd changes when the camera angle changes. And again. The shape of Council Rock changes. The background behind Aquila changes. A moment ago, there was a solid wall of wolves in front of Mowgli. Now, there's suddenly what appears to be a convenient opening for the camera. Lala keeps sitting in different places. First she's on the side, then in the center, then she disappears entirely. Kichi was already standing next to the branches, and there weren't any fruits near him. Now he's farther away, and suddenly there are fruits everywhere. The background behind the tree changes. And now Kichi is back next to the branches. Where did Kichi's fruits go? There were orange flowers in front of Lala. Now they're bushes. Kichi should be perfectly capable of fitting into a rabbit hole of that size. Everything changes, including the background. A moment ago, Lala was holding her head higher than Kichi's. They were facing the burrow, and now they're suddenly standing sideways to it. And of course, the background changes a little. So you're telling me Bacchus and the dark gray wolf were following Kichi this entire time, but only caught up to him after Lala had already pinned him down? Lala's paws were on Kichi's back. Now they're on his shoulders because the plot requires Kichi to bite her. Where did Bacchus go? Logically, Lala should have fallen right next to the burrow. Lighting before, lighting after, background change, lighting before and after, and now a vine suddenly appears behind Mowgli. That tree was in a completely different place in the wide shot. The background behind Mowgli changes. Bagheera suddenly becomes lighter. What exactly is that white line behind Shere Khan? Mowgli was standing right at the edge, but now he's farther away. Cliché, the villain talks instead of attacking.